Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
Oscast.
It can be lonely at the top. We all know what it's like to lead and own a business and wanting to scale, but finding yourself at a glass ceiling. That is where the power of collaboration and connection comes in. Hi, I'm Natasha Milani. I'm an expert at helping businesses and business owners harness the power of collaboration to connect, scale and grow. I am passionate about collaboration. I believe that no one executes alone and we all do better when we do it together. Welcome to this Power of Collaboration podcast. It's wonderful to have you here. I hope that you get the inspiration and information you need to harness the power of collaboration to break through your glass ceilings. Today, we're talking to David Johnson, Managing Director of Mott McDonald. Welcome, David.
Hi, Natasha. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have today from the lens of as Managing Director of Mott McDonald, but also you've seen a lot of collaboration in the city, state and Australia and beyond about bringing great projects together. So looking forward to the conversation. Let's just start by a bit of background about you, David.
Okay, so I grew up in South Australia, in country South Australia, in Strathalbyn. Went to university in Adelaide, which was fantastic, and started my career as a civil engineer in 1980. So I wasn't sure where civil engineering would take me, so in the early days I was doing civil infrastructure, small-scale projects, if you like. But one of my early projects was Adelaide Oval, restoration of the scoreboard, and then I got involved with the demolition of the Southern Stand and the building of the Bradman Stand. And that sort of inspiration to do something for the state sort of was something that drove my career from that point.
And share with us a little bit more about Mott McDonald as a company.
So back then I was working for a company called Connor Wagner, and Connor Wagner won the project to build the first underground loop, railway loop in Melbourne. That was an interesting project, but they needed help from an international company. So they found a company called Mott McDonald in the UK. And Mott McDonald in the UK had done some of the very early London underground construction, and that work was in the early 1900s actually. Very interesting projects because they were using steam trains to pull the tubes through those tunnels back then. And one of the challenges, of course, was getting the steam and the smoke out of the tunnel systems, and Mott McDonald was involved in that. And so over time, Mott McDonald developed this huge expertise in sort of infrastructure projects, and Connor Wagner brought Mott McDonald to Australia. So that was in the 50s. So Connor Wagner had this history, and in 1997, 98, I took my family, I have 3 daughters, to London to work on various projects, including Wembley Stadium. And the reason they asked me to work on Wembley Stadium is they knew I had a history with Adelaide Oval. I worked on the Melbourne Great Southern Stand, and those projects were sort of building blocks for me to get involved with Wembley Stadium. We bid Wembley Stadium, we built Wembley Stadium, and it was a fantastic project. And then I learnt a lot from Mott McDonald in that time, and then I came back to Australia. So coming back here, we worked on the extension to the convention centre. So that was an interesting project. That was we worked with an architect from Chicago, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. That was a fantastic project. Again, a piece of infrastructure that was very important to the state. And so I developed my career in sort of building infrastructure that was for public infrastructure, if you like, social infrastructure for the state. 10 years ago, we started Mott McDonald because I had all that history and that knowledge of Mott McDonald here in Australia. And there was just two of us, and it was quite a challenge and quite a journey, and now we're 1,000 people.
So you mentioned you didn't know where being a civil engineer was going to take you, but there's a huge amount of impact that you've had. You talk about the passion and you have for South Australia.
Yeah.
Just share with us about becoming a civil engineer and now transitioning that to your purpose and the impact that you have on cities and states and people.
So it's really interesting what's happening in our industry. So traditionally, we were engineers building infrastructure, and everyone cared a lot about the engineering and the infrastructure and the hard-built form. But these days, actually, our purpose is all built around social outcomes. And that transformation from hard, engineering infrastructure into projects which actually make a difference is very, very important. But that has to be built on things like technical excellence. We've got a huge focus on our digital, the digital intervention, so that we can use data, for example, to drive projects using concepts like digital twins, creating digital twins of the infrastructure and using the data to tune that infrastructure. For example, we did Adelaide Oval, as you know, and developing Adelaide Oval as a project was quite interesting, but we knew that was just on the verge of the digital revolution in terms of infrastructure, and getting data from Adelaide Oval is a very important part of running that piece of infrastructure, because you can use that data to drive the fan experience. Where do the fans go? Where do they buy, their pie, their chips? Where do they get a drink? What products do they want to use? What time do they arrive at the stadium? When do they leave the stadium? All this data we now use to design infrastructure, which is similar to what we're doing in Sydney at the moment for metros, for example. So it's all about the customer experience. It's all about the social outcome.
And that is how I actually met you when I was a councillor in the City of Adelaide through the Adelaide Oval project. And it was truly astonishing to see that project evolve. It changed our cultural landscape here, not just the physical, but the cultural way we thought about ourselves in Adelaide. And you drove a lot of that. And we worked on the Lacornu site on O'Connell Street. Again, you drove some of that thinking. So I think it's important everyone knows the impact that you've had on the day-to-day when they drive past the Oval or 88 O'Connell Street, that the brains of David Johnson is behind that. I just wanted to share that with everyone. So Mott McDonald, you said you went over to the UK, then you came back, you established Mott McDonald Asia Pacific, based here in Adelaide, head office. 2 people, now at 1,000 people. Just from the lens of growing a business from 2 people to 1,000 people, can you just share some insights about the challenges, the strategy, the business side of the conversation?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's quite a challenge when you go from an existing company and you know everyone, you have a lot of levers to pull, you know all the infrastructure within that company, to starting from scratch. That's quite a challenge. So we gave it a lot of thought, but we knew that we wanted to build it on a nice culture, a lovely place to work, a happy place to work, a respectful place to work. So culture's number one. The other thing about culture in our industry is technical excellence is critical, because if we're not great at what we do, you've got nothing really to give our clients. So you have to decide what the building blocks are, if you like, of your business in terms of culture. And then the second thing is change. So you have to be willing to, I think, be agile as a business, and your strategy, I remember the strategy we determined back then has changed a lot over the past 10 years. Now, how do you do that without creating chaos within your business is very important. It's a bit like a funnel. I look at people, you start really with 1 or 2 people. It's like creating a business. You share your strategy, and then you share that with a couple more people and a couple more people. And by the time you get to the top with your strategy, a multitude of people have already participated in creating that strategy. So that means when you get there, you get a lot of buy-in to where you're taking the business. And if you haven't got that, if you haven't got your people going with you, you just can't get the support and the drive of your staff. And I've got to say, you know, I struggle to get my staff to stop working. You know, we don't tell them to work hard, but they're so passionate about what they do. They do it anyway. And that's an indication to me that they are actually participating in the business. They love what we're doing and they love the culture of Mott McDonald.
And that's no accident. You said, you know, you built the culture, you created those building blocks. And I have had many a conversation with you, David, and you have an ability to think strategically. When it comes to strategy, you know, in our last podcast, Anthony Kittle nicely said that strategy is about what you don't do as much as about what you do. How do you take those ideas and actually put them into a bit of a comprehensive way of rolling it out in your business?
Yeah. So I guess we focus on two things. When you're thinking about future strategy, you have to make sure that your current business is stable and performing well. But stability means it also needs to be agile. So we might have what we think our clients need, but you know, we have meetings with our clients and they're always asking for different things. So that agility and that ability to respond to their needs quickly is part of the strategy. But while you're doing that, you have to be looking forward. And we have 10 initiatives at the moment which we're driving and investing in, things like pathways to zero carbon. How do we help our clients actually achieve carbon neutrality? We're very proud that Mott McDonald did that 2 years ago. We became accredited as the first engineering company globally to achieve that. So that's an example. We're working on cybersecurity, digital. I've already mentioned digital twins. So these projects and social outcomes, resilience up in Asia as a result of climate change. So we're working on how we respond to these things and looking forward all the time. As well, at the same time, we're driving our business with its current building blocks, which are around transportation, energy, buildings, advisory, and water. They're the building blocks of our business. All the things that society actually needs to live, work, and play.
And that's a really nice structure. So I've got that quite clear in my head now, thank you. And you are working in an environment where cutting edge is status quo. You have to think like that every day. You talked about some of the things that we know about. We've all commonly talked about carbon neutrality. What do you think is next on the horizon? What do you see is something that might not be common language already?
Well, people talk a lot about our digital future, and you know, sometimes when people discuss this subject, it hasn't got a lot of substance or depth. We are investing almost, we work in pounds, so £25 million, so $50 million at the moment in our digital future, and trying to map out not only what we need as a business to be highly digital, but also to respond to the needs of our clients. And I mentioned it before, using data in particular to drive infrastructure projects is critical. We have, as a society, so much data, and frankly, it's just not used efficiently or effectively to do that. So we create these digital twins now, and they are, you know, a virtual representation of a piece of infrastructure. And using that digital twin, we can apply data from all sorts of sources to try different things in the digital twin before we apply that to the piece of infrastructure. And that is a great place to be. That will be the future. Everything in the future will have a digital twin. It will have a digital representation. So that means, you know, it could be your car, and that already happens. It could be a piece of infrastructure. You know, it might be a hospital, for example. And we can use data with a digital twin to design a hospital before we create that hospital. And then once we've built and created that hospital, that data can be used to improve its efficiency. That's a completely different world. And so data is absolutely critical. The other thing is social outcomes, of course, for people. I think there's a huge shift in the way people think about, as I said before, the way they work, the way they live, the way they play. And people want different things. It's not sort of 9 to 5 anymore. People want flexibility in their work life. They want different experiences at work. And that, considering that in all the built form that we are designing, has to be paramount, because if you're not in that zone, then especially working for private developers, for example, if we're not in that zone, the products that are being presented to market just don't have the edge that they need to have to be competitive.
To those that are listening, data is a core message, and you use it at a large scale.
Yeah.
But it really, at any scale, we really should be using data to inform us, to create better outcomes. I think that's a very strong message for anyone listening to think about what that means for them and their business. I want to check in with you about collaboration and some projects where you've seen collaboration as an example. Before I do that, though, I just want to get a quick snapshot about where COVID has impacted your business and the projects and your clients in terms of infrastructure.
So COVID's been, of course, a challenge for our people for all sorts of reasons. We are a global company of 17,000 people, privately owned global company. We're in North America, the UK, through the Middle East, across to India, and then Asia Pacific, which is the piece I look after. So very diverse range of offices and countries that we work in. The response to COVID is quite different. You know, some people are happy to work from home because they have lovely homes, they've got space, they have comfort. But we don't think about people, for example, in Asia who have some people who work for us have very small accommodation, for example, and it's very difficult for them to just go home and work for months from home. So we have to come up with different responses in different locations to support our people. And that may involve, opening our offices and making sure our people are safe in those offices. So that's the personal response. From a business point of view, it's actually been really interesting because we have spent so much money on digital. We sent basically our 17,000 people home, and our systems held up quite well. So we can still design, we can still produce documentation, if you like, for our clients globally, with everyone working at home. In fact, our productivity went up. We measure productivity, and our productivity went up because people were just working hard from home. It was quite incredible, actually. So from a business point of view, it's been okay, and most governments have decided to stimulate their economies by investing in infrastructure. So we're busy, very, very busy. We do have to consider COVID in the future, so we are designing metros and airports in a different way because we need to think about social distancing. We need to think about how we might shut down part of an airport to respond to a pandemic, how we might keep people separate. So we are considering these things now for future events that might happen, like COVID-19.
Thank you. Interesting. And all businesses need to think in a different way. We're going to use infrastructure in a different way. But noting there that you measure productivity, which I think is another good insight. Now let's delve into my favourite topic, collaboration.
Yes.
And I've seen so many examples. I guess from a physical infrastructure point of view, collaboration is critical. I would say day to day for you, working with your clients and governments and coming up with new ideas. Let's talk about collaboration. Let's start with a project that's front of our mind here in Adelaide Oval.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how collaboration played a role in the redevelopment of Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, so I guess Adelaide Oval was an interesting challenge, of course, because football left Adelaide Oval in the 70s, and there had been some challenges between football and cricket. And of course, cricket had then taken control of Adelaide Oval and football had moved down to West Lakes. So I guess the first challenge was I think government were pretty keen to do the project, but the challenge was to get football and cricket to participate in that project in a meaningful way so they both had, a successful outcome. That was tricky. And it involved lots and lots of meetings and lots of discussion. And it's a bit like the strategy I was talking about it before. You start, talking to one or two people, socialising some ideas and then broadening that discussion until you get to a point where everyone really buys into what you're trying to achieve. We had some challenges. We had some challenges with the council, Adelaide City Council, and thank you to you, Natasha. You were very supportive on the project. And again, got us a sort of an audience with that council to buy into what we were trying to achieve. I can remember we were just doing so many presentations. I think we got up to 300 or 400 presentations just explaining to people what the redevelopment of Adelaide Oval was about. And in the end, it became self-fulfilling. And we used to give pieces of information to people, secret pieces of information. We'd share information with people. They would buy into it. They would think that was special. They would tell their friends and their colleagues. And you were sort of building this outcome that was self-fulfilling in the end. So it's all about, people say it's all about communication. It is about communication, but it's about what you tell people. It's how you tell people and how you be respectful. We needed to listen to football. We needed to listen to cricket. We needed to give them an opportunity, to put their views down, consider them, and then bring them together. And so it was a fantastic project, very successful project, but again, a piece of infrastructure which everyone is proud of now. It was challenging at the time, but they're very proud of it now. And what I like about projects like Adelaide Oval is that it makes us feel really proud as a state to have that infrastructure. And we're now bidding for the stadium in Brisbane for the Olympics. We just started that work at the moment. And it's brilliant when these requests for tender come out from Sydney or Perth Stadium, for example. They all mention Adelaide Oval as an example of, the type of product that they want in those states. So it's great to see Adelaide doing something better than the other states.
Great story. I love all the behind-the-scenes insights and knowledge that you've got. Can you give us an example of another project where collaboration played a key role? I almost asked that question knowing that it's what you do day to day anyway. But what about another behind-the-scenes story of a project that you've worked on? Could be here or could be beyond, globally.
More recently, we've been working on Sydney Metro, which is a fascinating project too. So transforming the rail system in Sydney to become a world-class metro, that's what the New South Wales government want to achieve. And that's quite hard because when you look at metros all over the world, places like the Middle East in Doha or Hong Kong or Singapore, we've worked on all those metros and they are world-class metros. And so that's the objective, that's the goal in Sydney. They have a budget of over $40 billion. But it's not just about a railway line. It's not just about a set of railway stations. It's about where they go to, what environment you create around those stations, the customer experience. I talked about that before. One of these metros is going out to the new Western Sydney Airport, for example. And what's that going to mean as a transformation for Sydney? Sydney will become really three cities. It'll become the harbour city, the central city, and the western city. That's what they want to achieve. And you can use a piece of infrastructure like Sydney Metro to create that vision for the city. So there's a lot of discussion about how we do that. It's not just about the piece of engineering, which is the railway line and the tunnel and the train set. So it's a world of, it's a long way away from the way we used to design infrastructure even 10 years ago. So behind the scenes, it's pretty robust, I have to say. It's quite challenging. Of course, governments always, they have budgets which they have to achieve, but there's always political outcomes they want to achieve as well. So those things are always sometimes in conflict, but sometimes when they can achieve a political outcome and a social outcome for an appropriate budget, that's when all the planets line up. But that doesn't always happen. And it can be quite a challenge to get there.
So, David, on the surface, Mott McDonald appears to be an engineering company, but you really do way more than that. Can you give us some examples, please?
So as I said before, social outcomes is a really important part of our business, and we have two areas which is quite interesting. One is education. We have a part of our business called Cambridge Education, and we actually train teachers. We have quite a significant teacher training business, including in Australia, in Melbourne at the moment. So that's interesting. We do that for the Victorian government. But we also have a health business, and health is fascinating because it can deliver very important outcomes, social outcomes, as I've said before. And we do a lot of work for the UK government all across Asia and Africa. And a couple of examples might be a transformation that we made in a community in South Africa, where it was at a crossroad, and there were a lot of trucking companies drove through this community, and unfortunately it was a community that was used mainly as a truck stop for prostitution. The problem with that is that it had one of the highest level of AIDS in the world in that community, which was a devastating thing for the people and that community. So our people were amazing. They created a safe way for these workers to have sex, and they created a community newsletter and guidelines which people got really involved with, and the prostitution industry bought into, I guess, a new way of working, and the AIDS in that community has dropped significantly, and that's all through an intervention of our people in Mott McDonald, which was fascinating. In Asia, there's an issue with dengue fever, and we had our people try to resolve an intervention, if you like, to save or to slow down the spread of dengue fever from mosquitoes. And our people, quite interestingly, came up with this concept in some of these smaller cities of giving younger children buckets and fish, and they treated them like pets. But of course these were places that would attract the mosquitoes, and these fish, which were selected by our people, eat the mosquitoes, and the spread of dengue fever in some of these townships dropped significantly. So these health interventions, which need to be low cost, they don't need to be sophisticated, but they can have a huge impact in those communities.
That's a great example of innovation, collaboration, empowering your people to be innovative, and purpose. Why wouldn't you go to work every day knowing that you can solve those type of problems?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people listening to this podcast will be an SME business owner, for example. You run a multinational organisation. Can you share how collaboration between a multinational and local supply chain works, and what might be some good tips for those that are looking to connect with multinational companies?
I think just because we're a large company doesn't mean that we have all the skills to deliver the types of infrastructure I've been talking about, or the projects I've been talking about. So we in Mott McDonald are always looking for skills and new skills that are emerging to apply to our business. I was telling you earlier that we are looking at visualization people, for example, movie makers, people from the gaming industry, data analysts, and people that out of banking industries. These are all people that I never thought we would collaborate with. So, any company that has a new idea or is an emerging company shouldn't really think that they don't have a place in the in creating the infrastructure that we've been talking about. So I think, be a bit bold and be willing to approach industries that they may not think they could be part of, because there are huge opportunities. And I just used a couple of examples.
I love Ben Crow, who's Ash Barty, or Team Barty, as they say, mindset coach. I've seen him interviewed. I highly recommend everyone Googles him. Great guy. He talks about creating a to-be list rather than a to-do list. What's on David Johnson's to-be list?
Wow, that's a big question, Natasha. I think, for me, I would really like to help companies or clients become net zero. I think that's really important for the planet, that we get our ducks in a row and we explore new ways of doing things so we can achieve net zero before our government even sets targets, which they haven't done in Australia, of course, but most states have done that. So for me, net zero outcomes are really important, and we are looking at all sorts of technology, which is fascinating, transforming the bus fleet in New South Wales to electric, but creating electricity with hydrogen, and how we do that and how do we deliver that into a city like Sydney is fascinating. Offshore wind, we're not only building wind farms, of course, on land, but we're now designing offshore wind all over Asia at the moment. These things are important because they do two things. They save the planet in terms of our carbon footprint, but they lower the cost of electricity. And lowering the cost of electricity is very important for communities, especially communities in Asia, who really need a leg up to have a better social outcome. And if you can give them cheaper electricity, a lot of things can come from that. That's a focus area for me at the moment. As a leader in Mott McDonald, we just want to create a vision for our clients to be able to achieve net zero pathways and outcomes for their businesses. In terms of the business of Mott McDonald, I would like to see it grow, but grow in the right way. I don't think we need to be huge. I mean, we're already 1,000 people. My vision was always to try and keep to 1,000 people, but I think we will exceed that because we're winning so much work. But I would like to focus on high quality work, good projects, and as I said before, technical excellence. Because if we just get too big, we end up just doing projects for the sake of keeping a whole bunch of people employed. That's not my vision. My vision is to do high quality, interesting work and looking to the future.
Any final tips for those that are listening today, David?
So as a leader, I spend a lot of time trying to find great people to work in the business. We talked about culture and strategy, that's fine. But in the end, it's all about the people. So as a leader, invest a lot of time in trying to find great people. And, when I look at our business now, we were 2 people 10 years ago, 1,000 people now. We've introduced 150 very senior leaders into the business, and I've interviewed most of those people. And that's been great. And I've learnt so much from those people, and I continue to learn from those people. So as a leader, invest time in your future leaders, and they will take the business, as I said, beyond 1,000 people. And where that will take Mott McDonald in the future, who knows? But it's a great opportunity for some young people to do what I've done.
You've driven an amazing culture within that organisation. That's a great tip. So thank you for your time, David.
That's all right. I really enjoyed it.
At SA Leaders, we are all about collaboration and community. If you're curious to know more about how we help businesses and leaders just like you to scale and grow beyond their glass ceilings, then visit our website at www.saleaders.com.au. And please don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your network, and write a review if you really enjoyed it. This has been an Audiosity production. I'm Natasha Milani, and I look forward to chatting with you next time. Happy connecting, and see you soon.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.